My name's Dr. Anthea Fudge and I'm a lecturer at UniSA College as part of Education Futures. I guess in my background as both a scientist and educator, I've always been interested in sort of data overall. And so learning analytics was just a bit of a natural fit from me moving from a science-based background to a science and educational-based background. And it helps me with my teaching to understand students a little bit more. So it just gives that extra data point that can help. So within my teaching and research, I'm using it in a couple of multiple ways. I use learning analytics with some of the dashboard technology that we have at UniSA to help me track and understand my student cohort a little bit more. It can also be really useful when I'm using it for some video analytics, in particular for any lecture content or little course videos that I create. That can help me to sort of gauge the student environment. So although I am seeing my students both in person and online, depending on their mode, it still gives me that holistic overview of what's going on and can help me understand if there's any pinch points or points in the semester that they may be needing extra support. So with some of my assessments, it can be a difficult time for students, and one particular problem that I looked at was with some final assessments of the course. When students are really busy, they might be lagging behind a little bit in some of the lecture watching, and I can access that by looking at some of the data analytics from the lectures. If I notice that students might be missing some of the lecture materials, then what I can do is write or do a very short video that can summarise some of the key points just to get them out of that sticky situation, and then that can be useful for them to get back on track and help and support them. And then that's also useful for me when I'm looking at seeing their submissions or seeing if they request extensions. I can use the data from that short video via the learning analytics system to see if they are accessing it or not. If not, then I can forward the short video to them, which can then succinctly explain exactly what they need to do to complete the assignment effectively. So I think some of the benefits of learning analytics is it just gives you another data point that can be really useful. So students are complicated, our lives are complicated, and teaching in a classroom, both in person and online, is also quite complicated. But data analytics and learning analytics can provide that extra bit of support to basically ascertain if something's working or not. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it's a really great addition to sort of your toolkit as a teacher and educator. A really good example can be when you might want to see if there are any students at risk, and you could perhaps use some learning analytics to assess if that may be the case or if it adds to some of the hunches. And also in a classroom, you're always gauging data points from students of are they paying attention or not, if they're looking at you, if they're getting distracted. And so particularly in an online environment, if you have external students or even students internally, if they've got online materials, that can be useful to see if they are working through the materials or not. If they are pausing and looking at it repeatedly, then you might need to clarify some of your content or instruction. Or it can tell you if the videos are too long or too short, if they're stopping or starting or pausing halfway through. So it can just give you that overall sort of understanding of that ecosystem within the classroom. I think there are a couple of challenges. As a teacher, as an educator, it can just be really complex in the classroom. Learning and teaching is a difficult skill, and sometimes it can be hard with all the little iterations and changes you might make to add another string to your bow. But I think it can be an important one that if you can spend some time and start to understand why you want to use the learning analytics and how it can help you, and have a really clear understanding of knowing that it won't be a silver bullet, but what it can be really useful for. Then you might want to speak with some colleagues and see how they're utilising learning analytics or other educators, and that can be a useful way to get more of an understanding of the really positive and interesting impacts that it can add to your teaching overall. With some of the challenges, I guess, of implementing learning analytics systems within schools, it can be perhaps just teacher training, and there might not be always the professional development opportunities. But if you are able to get some professional development on utilising learning analytics in your classroom, I think it can be a very valuable step. You might also want to see if you could be mentored by anyone as well that has utilised or adopted some of these technologies or tools before, and see how that might help you. And if there are also support from your institution as well, or your teachers' education area, you could definitely get on board and try it out. It's always good to try new things with your teaching and see how that might help students, particularly in this 21st century world that we live in, where technology is sort of ubiquitous to our everyday lives. We can see how learning analytics can be used to support teaching and education in the right way. I think if you're thinking of starting to use learning analytics, it's always good to grab a couple of colleagues or like-minded friends or mentors that you can use to really bandy together and go through the experience with someone else. I don't think you want to approach this alone or in isolation. You might also look towards a mentor or another teacher or educator that has used it before and ask them to help guide you along the way. I think there's strength in working as part of the community and learning from one another, so sharing your successes and your challenges, and I think that's the best way to go forward, and it will help you to be successful in the adoption. I think learning analytics is on the rise, and I think and I hope that it continues to rise in the right way, with integrating not only sort of the technology side but the learning side as well, and also the personal side of teaching and education. And I think there's a lot more research ongoing at the moment to really make sure that there's that branch between the technology and the learning. And so I think that's a really positive step, and I think it's heading in the right direction. And I think the more that we can engage with educators, with teachers, with data scientists, and other people in the learning analytics community, I think that's really important to continue to progress it in the right way. I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be a continued explosion with learning analytics. And I hope that it can be used appropriately as a tool to help educators support their students. I think at the heart of good teaching, we want to support our students and support our teachers. And if we can use and implement this technology to help us to do that a little bit easier with the technology that we have in play, I think that will be a really important step.